Hello everyone. I hope you had some great lunch. Are you awake? We'll try to make sure we keep you awake. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, joining for this session. Really appreciate it. I think there is a great association with IIBA that all of us have. One, of course, Ken and I have been associated. Shantha has just joined as a part of the Global Board of Directors. So please give her a good, big hand.
Thank you.
And Shalini, during her earlier career, has been part of the New York chapter of IIBA. So what you see here are, people who are really passionate about IIBA and also willing to contribute to the success of this profession. When I was looking for, the term title to be coined for this particular topic, I think this thing, the career architecture, the competency architecture, especially in the digital world, excited me a lot. Why? Because we are at a juncture as BA community where things are changing so fast that we don't know whether we are going in the right track or not. And do we have enough guidance available for us to ensure that we are going in the right direction? So, with Shantha and Ken, we've had a number of conversations in terms of how do we really unclear or unclutter this mess and ensure that there is enough guidance that's available to the community. So as a part of the thought leadership engagement, we did create some guidance and some white papers around it. But here's a chance from, listening to few experts here to understand what does it mean for them in their organizations, why there is a need of a new career architecture, and is it really necessary? Shantha, you want to take this up first. Do you think there is a value in doing it?
Okay, so I think firstly, congratulations to all of you, and I think it's a great time that I heard you all have spent in the yesterday and today. I think a well time spent on the commitment and the energy and also a lot of learning, I suppose. So I think congratulations to each and every one of you for taking your time in doing this. I think that kind of sets out in terms of how important this is. Today, I think with a lot of our customers, there is a lot of things happening on the customer side. I think you look at a Google and start wondering what are they up to, or you look at a Shell and wonder what they are up to. I think every one of our customer imperatives are significantly changing, and in that context, whether you look at business models that are changing, or whether it is the technology that is disrupting, or whether their industry itself is disrupting, or their company itself has to be transformed for their own sustenance and survival, I think all of these are leading to just one important imperative, which is understand the business context, bring in the technology to enable the growth of the business. And I think how I see the business analysis of today and for the few years to come, because in IT today, you can't really say 20 years from now today. I think for the few years to come, business analysis will play a much, much more crucial role than ever before in terms of advising customers for changing their models, in terms of advising them for the chances of what they can do to improve their growth and revenue. And more importantly, I think each and every one of us who are in the room, for our own career to have a lot of new opportunities. I don't know if I could even imagine and think there is a role that would come at this time which is called an experience designer. I don't know. I never thought of a role like this which will ever evolve. I think those are the kind of transformations we are seeing in the industry. I see this as actually a great opportunity. The time at which each one of us are in and the time at which all these changes are happening, it's a wonderful opportunity for multiple career chances and career opportunities this particular transformation is throwing up. Actually, that's how I see the career architecture, and absolutely relevant. In a way, I think I should envy some of you who are very, very young. You're all going to see some of those transformations and disruptions in your roles that probably, I don't know, even if I had to do a time machine, I can't rewind myself.
Thank you, and I'll come back to you for the changing customer imperatives, Shantha. I want to hear from you, Shalini. You had a very large captive. You got a great product portfolio for Broadridge, a number of BAs and product owners across the globe. And we've had some interesting conversation. What do you think, what do you see from a career architecture standpoint?
Very aligned to what Shantha was speaking about. A few things hit me though. I keep thinking it's not that transformation has not happened in the past. It's always happened. What is picked up is the speed. So for me, I think that's, whether you're a business analyst, you're a product manager, you're a developer, you're a coder, you're a QA analyst, I think it all comes down to how quickly we're adapting to change. That's something which hits me all the time. Second is when it comes to technology and business, right? So I think there's a very nice shift that has happened. So I keep giving this example and we keep talking about in our sector. So I obviously work with the financial services. One of our largest banks, Goldman Sachs. So probably when they start 30 to 40 years ago, they called themselves as a bank. Okay? Their main operations was a bank. 20 years ago, they brought in technology. And they said, I'm a bank with great technology. It's enabling my business. Today, they're rebranding it as, I'm a fintech company who also happens to run a banking business. I believe that's a huge, huge change and shift in mindset. So as business analysts, I believe that's something which we as a community have to think differently. We are at the upfront of the life cycle for the SDLC. But what we are being driven by is no longer just customer and market. We're being driven by technology. So I think that's a big mind shift. And whether you call it skills or thinking, I think it's a cultural shift. So I look at that as one part of the aspect, and which would definitely impact the career architecture. I think there's no question about relevance of business analysts. I think I was speaking to somebody over the lunch and I was saying, BA is not a role, it's a mindset. So like whether I'm a technical writer, whether I am a coder, the business and the analysis both remain. So it's really every skill set we speak about as part of IIBA or as part of any of our organizational career architectures, it's really that which we are learning and teaching about. So those are few of the thoughts. I have some more, so I'll leave it for now.
So common thinking that you're saying that is very relevant.
Yes, absolutely.
Ken, I want to come to you with this relevancy in mind. What are you seeing from IIBA standpoint, and where do you think we can contribute as IIBA from a career architecture standpoint, and what are some of the things that we could do to help the community shape up their career?
Well, I think part of it is putting together a roadmap that people can effectively use to guide their careers, and looking at foundational level business analysis, and then looking at how to create the specialties on top of that, right? So it's a total transfer. It's building on foundational knowledge and layering on the specialties and micro learnings and micro skills that they need to build up into those specializations. So that's our game plan, is to respond to that in the marketplace, increase the reach of our BA BOC to new areas of knowledge to share, devote best practices. And I think the other that we're looking at is trying to expand that into how to create lifetime learning to keep up with this rapid pace from the individual perspective, and share the best of that and make it be, people choosing, not just, historically companies like to say they're dictating the path of an individual. And I think it's just as important that people say what inspires them, what really motivates them to want to work at something. And it's that overlay together that has to happen. So what skills do they want to specialize in? What capabilities do they want? And what's being sought after in their employer or in the market? And looking for them to make good choices, to advance themselves, to build their career capability, and to find real energy coming out of the decisions they make so they can contribute. And IIBA has a role in that, in sharing knowledge and in sharing and guiding around what are those characteristics that we see in the market, that they see in the market, and trying to get those lined up.
I think very nice, thank you. And I was just looking at the conversation. There are three keywords that stand out in my views. BA as a mindset, the speciality, and then the lifelong learning. I'm going to count you for all these three things now. So Shalini, let me come to you. First of all, it's a music to a ear when you say BA as a mindset, because everybody thought business analyst is a title and a role. And only someone who carries that title has the privilege of applying BA best practices. On the contrary, I'm of the proponent. I think there are at least one person in the room who is laughing. There are a few people in the room from my entity days who are laughing because we used to call ourselves as BA mindset and not as a capability or a... So can you elaborate a little more on that? Why do you think so? And if you see a relevance of mindset across the spectrum of roles, especially in the digital world and this customer experience, the customer centricity that we're talking about, what would it look like? So can you focus on that a little bit more?
Sure. Okay, let me frame it in two ways. One is in the traditional world of what we're already doing. I'm not saying non-digital, but semi-digital world that we have. Traditional sectors of banking, healthcare, etc. Even if you look at that, the entire SDLC, the only way each individual can progress as a career is if you are contributing to the end business. I think that's very clear to all of us. In India, each one of us, we have grown up with potentially as a development community or operations community. But I think until we hit that understanding that until you contribute the business value, you're not going to progress ahead. And that's gone all the way up to the leadership now, right? So I think that's a big shift change. So that brings the value of what does a business mean. So for me, that is why business analysis is about getting to the business, end business, wherever that is. It could be across the globe. And it makes it harder for us from here to translate to that end business. But I think that's the first part which I want to address. The second part, from a digital standpoint, let's be very practical, right? Today, customer base is changing for each of us. Any organization, any sector, the customer base is really changing very rapidly. I mean, let me take an example. I have a 6-year-old son. So what he thinks and learns today is very different from what I learned, right? It's a very practical example most of us can relate to. He starts with something, a remote where he has to press a key. He says, this doesn't work. It has to have touch screen, right? For me, that's digital transformation. So digital transformation is no longer just in the industry, right? It's transforming every part of our life. Now, what does it mean from a BA standpoint? Can we find opportunities in our traditional businesses to go digital? I still believe 70% of the world's business as such is still a lot of legacy components, right? We've spoken of a lot of interesting concepts in the morning. I loved some of the concepts around .in, etc. I still believe they're in the minority, right? They're coming and disrupting. But we have to still solve the larger world problems. And that is where I think the BA mindset across the value chain of understanding business, being always analytical, either at the strategic level or all the way till you're deploying your code into the client becomes very critical. So how you organize your careers individually and as leaders, how do we organize the BA practice? I think has changed a bit. One is the core analysis is now moving into product management. Core analysis is moving more towards data and data architecture. So data architect and business analyst, a lot of synergies there. Then with the RPA world, there is a lot of intersection with how do you look at RPA opportunities, visualization, and I think there's a lot of paths that BA is diverting into. I think that's a big change. That's how I look at the mindset. So.
Very nice. And I want to continue this. I think there's another factor, specialization, and we've spoken a lot as well from an Accenture context. And right now with the meeting with Ken, can you elaborate a little more on the specialization front?
So I think she put out very nicely in terms of saying that and I think even in the earlier conversation, I think the time at which we are in today, it just presents beautiful and immense opportunities. And taking that cue of that mindset change and the new roles or the kind of new emerging opportunities. Like today, if I have to go to a client and I have to explore an opportunity can I look for automation opportunities in the span of RPA, wherever you can. So you as a business analyst or I as a business analyst, because I think there is an ability to understand that business domain, there is also an element that is more important today, which is getting a little more deeper in that specialization. So which means the first and foremost is Earlier, probably we were okay if a business analyst was analytical and also the person was good enough in probing and asking all the good questions. So we used to say, wow, a very good business analyst. Who knows, these are the 10 questions, you are able to ask all the right questions. Today, that is definitely there. I don't think anything of that goes away. But I think what is becoming more important is, are you keeping the customer's empathy in the mind? Who is that end customer? What is that experience you're going to create? And thereby, are you asking those logical questions? So it is not just the analytical question that you will ask, you will have to ask those logical questions in terms of understanding the full enterprise process models, and thereby are you able to create that empathy-based, human-centric design kind of questions. I think that is what is required more and more now. I would say I think that is one example of that specialization. So it is no more just a foundation that's going to work for any one of us to stay relevant. The first and foremost is, can you go deep dive into learning a little more into those process models or business processes that's going to help you create more and better conversations with customers. I think that's the first one I would say. The second one I would recommend is, I think that's another very important aspect in the specialization is, the models are changing. That is the ones that we are all used to maybe in the past, which is waterfall. So any end customer is probably in the early times, it was okay that a product of a phone will be made. It will come after, I don't know, it will come whenever it can come. Whenever the company announces, it will come. But I think today, by the time I've got this phone in the market, I think we are already looking for, okay, there are these 3 features which is not even here. Come on, when is the next one coming? So I think the whole angle of not waiting for no customer, or for that matter, no implementation program today. You are going to wait for some months and years or whatever. So that is already changing the dimension of how you gather requirements. How you are gathering requirements for a short-lived, minimum viable product that can actually go into the market. It is not just for test purposes. It has to actually go into the market itself. So which means again, your ability to think of, so that is also another element of specialization that we are all not naturally used to. Earlier we were probably okay for gathering all the requirements that was needed, but now you're trying to gather only those features, only those requirements that will still have to work, that still has to go into the market. At the same time, when you get the future requirements, it continuously builds and adds. So that is another ability that we are supposed to have as business analysts today, and that also brings in another level of specialization with respect to, just transforming and asking these kind of user stories, these kind of user kind of questions, empathy-based questions, experience-based questions. I think that is another specialization. So it's not just going to be logical, analytical questions, good requirement questions, 10 questions you asked, good to have, must have. No, that's not going to work anymore. I think the last thing I would say, I think there is a lot that you can think of in specialization, but just for now, I think the last thing that will be very important is that earlier it was all system-centric designs. Today, all the designs, all the testing strategies, everything is becoming human-centric designs, which means how you test the product, how you test for the features, how you test for an experience. I think that is becoming more and more important, which means while you're designing these features, and you're already designing only those small features, but you're already thinking of that potential end state, which is actually not there at all, and you're already thinking about what kind of testing strategies you got to have in mind while you're designing this now itself. So I think specialization in terms of your competency, specialization in terms of deep domain industry segment, specialization in terms of these kind of competency skills. It's about the empathy-based design. It's about these kind of aspects that we just talked. I think all of that is becoming more crucial. So specialization with a lot of these things are becoming more and more relevant for us to stay relevant in the transformation that's happening.
I'm glad you brought all of this up. I just want to point out a few things. I think we have discussed some of this in last 2 days, but we have addressed some of this aspect as a part of the thought leadership papers. Shantha, you have seen them. And I really want to bring back the conversation and your attention to some of those. The first paper, again, you please go ahead and download those copies. They're free of cost. You don't have to pay anything, irrespective of whether you're a member or not. But make use of those resources. It talks about best practices, but if you look at the second paper, it gives you a clear architecture around different roles in the digital space that we see it emerging. and also the specialization model. If you recall yesterday during Ashutosh's session, we discussed about micro-credentials and specializations on the top of the foundational competencies, which also include the best practices, which are like BABOK and all, but the 6, 7 best practices that we have been calling out in last 2 days. All of that become integral part of the communication. So I'm glad that you brought out. I also wanted to point out that IIBA is addressing some of these things as we speak. Please leverage those resources that are available to you. Shantha, I'm going to come back to you for testing. I think I'm going to please hold this question. Ken, I want to come to you for the lifelong learning. And we've discussed a lot. And I think it's not just digital alone, but I think, and not just BAs. In the world where we live today, I think this lifelong learning has no age bar. I don't think it is a kid who has to learn lifelong or a old professional like you who have to not learn. I think learning has become so fast-paced and so continuous. What are your guidelines for business analysis community?
So I think the whole learning experience extends even beyond the business analysis community and is really a global crisis of how do we include people into this new digital world. As automation takes over, as a number of things change in the world, I think lifelong learning is something that society is going to have to adapt to keep people gainfully employed. So reflecting that back into the business analysis profession, I think the same burden is on us as the drivers of the implementation of these things so that we change our paradigm to look beyond just the traditional space in how we can learn some of these new things that are demanded of us from changes in the marketplace, changes in the technology, changes in the expectations of customers. So I think all of those drive us to say, if we're going to remain relevant and we're going to remain gainfully employed and be able to contribute back to society with outcome-oriented solutions, we're going to have to stay learning. You just can't go to college and say, I've learned everything I need for the rest of my life, or I get my CBAP certification, I know everything I need to know about business analysis. That's not a valid paradigm. It probably never was, but it certainly isn't now with the pace of the changes that we're facing, which is faster than it's ever been. So I think that mindset of training ourselves to be faster learners and making sure we motivate ourselves to find what we want and to find fulfillment in the learning that we do, so it's keeps us on top of our game and keeps us feeling satisfied with the work we're doing because we really feel our skills are what they need to be successful.
So you want us to be even more younger to learn. I'm very fascinated by how my daughter learns. I think if I look at millennials, I'm sure there are smiles on everybody's face. It's phenomenal to see how fast-paced learning these guys are consuming and these kids, and nobody's teaching them. That's the best part. I think they just pick up the phone and do I don't know what not, and then they come back with the learning and they show it, an outcome of that. Do you think that way of learning requires change of attitude in the BA community as well? Because sometimes I believe sometimes the BA community gets boxed down with the current set of standards, current best practices, and then just stay with that and not able to think out of the box to sometimes just use this handheld device so often and come out with the learnings that are really needed for that point in time engagement.
So some of that's driven by personality things like fear of failure, right? That you're afraid to push the edges of things too much because then if you fail, you'll be criticized, right? So I think some of the lean mindset is something that we have to put into that thinking of if you're going to fail fast and correct it and keep correcting, right?
Correct.
So I think it's around those kind of attitudes we have to do. But it's also just a commitment to know that, it's like continuously getting to become a better person, a better me. We have to be a more capable me too, right? So I think it's that, just the desire to do it, to inspire people to want to pursue that, is kind of a mindset change that we have to make, and not just look at it as I'm working just to make income to keep my family supported, but I want to feel fulfilled. I want to feel like I'm accomplishing things, because that's the true motivation. And hopefully that learning is embedded in that process, and that you can feel good about learning. I certainly see it in my children, that when they learn something, it's like a rush for them, right? You know, if they win a game and get 500 gold stars that mean nothing, it's like it was a huge emotional rush for them to do that, right? So I think that kind of thinking we have to adapt into our lives, even though we're 30 or way the heck over 30 in my case. You know, so that I think that mindset is the critical thing to keep the profession evolving. And I think, you know, an organization like IIBA and other professional associations have to adapt to that mindset. We've been, you know, stuck in the paradigm of, you know, that we've been running with for the last 15 or 20 years as professional associations, and we have to transform ourselves to give back to the community and what the community needs, and how we can inspire them to rise up and do more.
If I may just add to that, Ashish.
Please.
I'm taking over your script.
No, that's fine.
Couple of things. I mean, if we just look back in the BA context also, right, this whole concept of lifelong learning, I think a couple of things are happening, right? One is at the organization and even at a BA.
Individual.
The whole structure is kind of disrupting. You think about it, we are becoming more and more like an organism, which means we have to be flexible in all directions. Your interactions are becoming multiplied. We no longer have the same source of customer, market, and client. You have multiple interactions, multiple sources. So we have to start becoming like, at one point organization evolution was matrix to network, right? Now I think we are way past all that.
Correct.
We really have to be like organisms, which means you are mutating and evolving on a very fast pace. And if you take that context, it's not just from a BA professional standpoint, but from as BA leaders who are building this practice also, I think we need to give that framework of failing fast, MVPs, POCs, building certain product ideas, have an ideation pipe. And these are things I believe from a framework standpoint is very critical. Which enables professionals
beautiful
to
points.
move into that. So.
Right. Thank you. You brought us beautiful points. Okay, for the scarcity of time, I also want to touch upon one more aspect, and that's testing. And there's a reason, I think, in the erstwhile or traditional BA space, there's always been a debate. Should BA do testing or not?
Whoa. You can
Look
take a
at
vote
this,
right
right?
now.
And you touched that point up, Shantha, and that's why I told you I'm going to come back, because I knew this is going to happen. And you brought in beautiful points about testing against human experience. Can you elaborate a little more on how do you see business analysis professionals contributing to that space? As a Babcock guide, and I'd like to elaborate this point a little more. As a Babcock guide, we say solution validation is the terminology that we use, is the role of a BA, which means there's a problem statement. You discussed, you elaborated, you elicited the needs, you analyzed it, and then formed solutions out of which you prioritized and figured out which one works the best, and then you validated the solution saying, yes, it meets the business need or not. That's the part of solution validation. And a lot of people get confused by testing and manual testing and functional testing and black box testing, and companies have been using BAs for testing a lot, even in the new world for that matter. How do you see this changing for the BA profession?
See, today, I think what is happening is with all these agile, DevOps, I'm sure many people are able to relate to some of these terms. Today, the roles are also blurring. So if I'm developing, I'm also testing, because there is a whole concept of continuous build and integration. So there is nothing called, today I will build, and then after some 8 months or so, somebody is going to sit and test. There is nothing like that today. It is really like in all the digital engagements, the way it works is you just continuously build, you continuously test, and you are continuously releasing the product into the market. So first of all, the role by itself, it is not like 10 different roles. Role by itself is becoming more and more integrated. And the other thing I always believe is that if you are a good quality assurance person, you can be the person who can go upstream in the life cycle and really make a lot of difference. Because today, I think with a whole lot of things that, that is going on, you don't know when this product goes out there in the market, the number of features, the number of experiences that there are a lot of consumers are looking for today. Today, there is a lot of products we actually make, we put it out in the field, we are actually building the rest of the product along with the customers, along with the end consumers. So which means you're continuously field testing this. So it is not like I built the product, I've tested it, now it's ready to go, so there is a go live, done. Not all those milestones are there anymore. Even in large ERP implementations, even if you're thinking of that. So today, continuous build and test is part of the role. Continuous build and integration and features going into the market and continuously testing with the market itself is really getting there almost in everything that we do. Given these kind of aspects that are happening, the only person who can really make a significant difference is the person who actually conceptualize some of these user stories, who really can, and speed is of essence. You really should be able to test out and say, yeah, you know what, these are the 3 scenarios, these are the 3 experiences. And why I was very particular about this human experience-based testing is that today it is no more of those manual testing and performance testing. Yes, they are all there. But I think what you are actually going to test is experience testing, which is the system navigatable? Is this, whatever that system is, it doesn't matter whether it's an ERP, it's a digital website, omni-channel, whichever category you look at, you're testing for experiences. How quickly is it easy for somebody to navigate? How quickly is it for somebody to make decisions? How quickly is it easier for somebody to move across and make decisions for whatever they have to buy or sell or whatever that is. So really, you're creating features and the features are translating into experiences, and that is what you're actually testing, and that is what consumers are looking for in whichever product you make. So with that, I think clearly, I strongly think the business analysts actually have a much powerful role to play to really transform and test for those experiences.
Correct. So you're pointing out not the testing, but the customer experience that the BAs need to deliver. And if they need to test that out, so be it.
Yes.
Very nice. Shalini, I want to come to your world. And in Broadridge, trillions on trillions of record and data points. How are you managing that mess? We said data lake, big data lakes, and I don't know, this is data, ocean or what.
You have to find it out.
You have to find it out, right? But so you manage trillions and trillions of dollars of assets, so which means, and it's been going on for so many years. I'm sure, I don't know how you're managing data around it and the role of BA that you see in managing that.
Absolutely. So I think that's evolving too. One is, yes, I mean, we manage about $6 trillion of worth of transactions that go through our system. It's one of our systems. Like that, we have multiple asset classes. And sensitivity around data and sensitivity around the entire BA role goes up 10x, 100x, unlike a regular BA. That's part of one of the onboarding processes of any BA into the process. This is a very, very big component. Security, authentication, authorization, and the whole management of that. Industrialization is a very big deal in this section. And also, because we have been in the industry doing this for last 50 plus years across the globe, productization is extremely key. And that doesn't stay with the product manager or a program manager. It stays with everybody, and it actually starts with BA. Majority of the cases, each one of my BAs actually are acting as a product manager, because what they're doing is when they're building one feature, they're looking at the entire client community, because one single feature can affect the industry. So it's that level of, that's one more. But when you look at data part of it and how it's evolving, because we generate this humongous amount of data, this is on our securities processing business. We also have another business called investor communications, where probably the data is even higher. It affects the entire corporate governance process. So what we have been looking at for the last 6 to 8 years, data as a key strategy is on multiple fronts. One is, how do we look at this data and generate insights and create value for our customers beyond what they're already doing? Because each of our customers themselves are either data providers or data intelligence agencies. That's part one. But which is where the role of a BA there starts all the way foundational skill of understanding what data means, not just about field to field attribute, but really what the data means as a business, and moves up to how do I model this, how do I create these interactions of the data. It's not just creating a data warehouse or a lake. It's about how does this data become, we call it fabric, and how is it dynamic enough that it can start generating value upstream and downstream. So that's a huge skill that we are building in internally. And one level above becomes a specialization within the data, which is where I think we had a conversation about the whole micro decisioning bit. This is where we have specialized COEs around what do we do with data in terms of either analytics, branch it out to a distributed ledger technology kind of use cases, blockchain, or on the RPA. Here we have brought in the concept of micro decisioning. The role of BA is very interesting here. What happens is you have data scientists, you have technologists who really build the application, and we've created the role of BA as a bridge between the two. What we have traditionally seen in many contexts is that you expect a data scientist to also understand the business and give. Part one is very hard to find people like that. Part two, you expect the technologist who is the application provider somehow to learn data science and also have the business and end up building application, which doesn't work. And we clearly distinguished, I know it's not an easy governance process, but the reason we distinguished, apart from the talent, was we wanted almost a Chinese wall between these three pillars. The first is data science ideally should have an unbiased view of looking at data. The insight should be purely based on data, is the hypothesis we go with. Fairly idealistic, but I think it's worked for us because we believe as soon as you make the data scientist responsible for the business, you get in the existing business bias and you're losing out potentially the right insights. Then we separated the application development part of it separately so that we can look at data from multiple connection points. Let's assume we have 10 different software systems generating 10,000 data points. So if I make the application provider part of data science, you'll only look at one or two interaction patterns that you're already aware of and not really looking at the entire ecosystem. And because we work in a context of typically we are always working with a huge interaction, external entities, market, regulators, our own clients, other systems, it is very important for us to have that interaction management as a separate role. So the BA actually is managing this for us. So that's the specialized BA role, and not an easy one, but that's where our data journey is kind of going on.
Phenomenal. I heard, when we started our career, it said bridging the gap. BAs are bridge between technology and IT. I see a true bridge being built right now here. I think let's open up for the conversation. It's been a phenomenal conversation. We have 25 more minutes, and I'm sure knowing this is a very, very important topic for these 500 people sitting in the room, it's important we hear from them and answer some of the questions. So we'll take on questions, guys. Please, the mics.
Looking at the past perspectives, we used to talk a lot about processes, methodologies, models, frameworks, and build a solution around it, with technology being an enabler. Now we're looking at a lot on technology, the technology-focused scenarios. Possibly, are we looking at building solutions around the technology? So earlier, technology was an enabler. Possibly in future, technology could be the driver. So because of this, is it possible that we lose sight of the solution part of it and build a solution around the technology and kind of missing the forest for the trees? So could we land up in such a scenario?
So let me take that. I think, see, technology alone is not going to solve, business problems. There are still many business problems which are better off the way you do it today, maybe manual or maybe just filing a record. There are still some business problems like that. So there is always a trade-off and there is always a business case for when you apply the technology and for what purpose you apply the technology and for what value you apply. I think, so there is always a business context, there is always a business problem, and then you find a business case for you to decide, is technology going to help accelerate solving that problem for me, or is technology going to be decelerating? I think that will continue to be always a decision-making point. So I don't think it will be a point where technology takes a driver from a business context, because then you're then you have a bigger question to ask yourself, what business are you in, or what are you really trying to drive at? I think that's kind of how I would see. So it is never like, I don't see ever a situation where technology takes a driver's seat and then business is going to kind of, run with that. I think it's always going to be business first, but how much technology can help accelerate my speed of my decision, speed of my growth, speed of my competitive advantage, I think those are all beautifully possible with all the things that is happening around us.
And I want to add this, that's a beautiful point, but I think it's also dependent on the availability of technology to solve a problem. I think I studied AI as a book during my engineering time in '92, right? And there was no technology. Everybody said there is a possibility of AI, and a lot of trials had happened, and it's been going on for the last almost 4 or 5 decades, actually. But now is when the technology has become cost-effective and available. And people are thinking, oh, there's a technology that can be leveraged. And in that journey, they try out something, and suddenly a use case evolves, and people start thinking about a new business model. I wanted to just share an experience here. There is a technology that somebody is building called Lyrebird. If you Google it, it's a digital voice. We've debated that, I think. So what this platform does is, it throws 30 statements in front of you. All you need to do is record yours, state those statements. You just have to, and then this platform captures your voice, generates a digital voice for you, and now you don't need to speak anything. All you need to do is type anything that you want to type, and the platform will speak for yourself. Now suddenly this technology has become available. It's the AI hub in Toronto and some of the other, University of Toronto, and people, the mentor for this technology is one of the head of Google's AI platform, for that matter. And suddenly there is a technology now that's available, and people are thinking, where do I put it? How do I put to use? So I think that's another, we did discuss about, putting horse behind the cart yesterday, but I think that's also another opportunity that comes to our way, because now technology is maturing, and they are enabling some of the possibilities of business models and a customer experience that we were not privy to earlier. Think about, Uber and Amazon Prime and, some of these experiences that we all go through, shopping and staying at home. Yeah. So I think that's another phenomenon that has evolved, and which is leading to a lot of the emergence of domains, a lot of the emergence of business practices, cross-pollination of experiences, and it just creates out something which we have not experienced. Somebody just thought about it and it comes out.
Yeah, great leadership on the stage. We all know this saying, science is a good servant and a bad master. So how good is it for digital and technology that's being discussed for the last 2 days? When we speak about science is a good servant but a bad master, so how about digital with respect to empathy, what Shantha was explaining? So how good is a master and how good it as a servant? Could you please throw some light on that?
So I think let's clear this question. So when you say science as a servant to...
Science is a good servant but a bad master. This is an old
Science
saying.
is a good servant but a bad master.
Correct.
Science
Term.
in the context of digital.
And thereby in the context of digital.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So I think, see, today, a lot of companies today, if you're looking for, there are so many companies, I think there are enough of statistics which says 50% of the companies which existed before is no more in the market. Yeah. Or there are a lot of digital disruptive companies which has come. I think nobody thought Uber will ever come, and somebody who doesn't even own a fleet or somebody who doesn't even own a driver will actually create a breakthrough innovation in the market which Nobody ever thought of all these things. I think the whole aspect of technology and thereby digitalization, what it is creating today is some of the breakthrough innovations which earlier was not possible. So science, being a master or being a slave, I think, yeah, that's one debate. But I think really, how is it really helping us, today to make some of those breakthrough innovations, or to make, so for example, in life sciences industry, whether you look at a cancer institute, cancer research, or millions and millions of data, I think that is one industry which is known for innovation for years and years and years. Now, technology was there. I'm sure there was enough of technology, but I don't think it was just still enough, because you will always find in some corner of, some part of the world, some epidemic has arisen and you don't have a vaccine. Or there is always a situation like that every time. We have still not figured out how to solve, wellness diseases for many, many such kind of special cases. I think today, digitalization or digital context, and thereby underlying there is a lot of technologies which are bringing all of these together, has basically helped us to solve a lot of problems for humans, I think for all of us at home, for all of us at our businesses, for all of us in the everyday lives of us. I think it has changed our life, and thereby I think the empathy or the experience, or for that matter, I really don't know if I would have sat at home and done a big basket order. I don't think I would have even dreamt of a day like that, right? I think that's the kind of experiences that it has caused, and I think with that, a lot of empathy has come with respect to considering that. How do I make a homemaker, or how do I make somebody who's working, whether it's a man or a woman, spending, almost 21 hours in a day outside, how do I make a better life for that person? I think these are all kind of things which digital and the associated technologies have made it possible. I think that's the kind of thing I look at it.
Yeah, that's the good part of it. What is the darker side of it? When it becomes a master, when we all succumb to digital and all that. So where it will lead to? So that is what.
Yeah,
so,
go ahead.
Sorry, just breaking that question into a couple of parts, right? One is, the good and bad. Let me just comment on that. Before that, think of it this way, or at least I think of it this way. I think what digital, and tomorrow it may be another phenomenon, I go back to my original point. The biggest change is the speed at which this is coming. So 5 years down the line, it may be something else altogether, right? We are naming it as digital because it's really transformed a number of things in the entire life cycle and ecosystem. But what it has done is, it's given us much more access to the customer. If I put on the hat of a service provider. But if I put on the hat of a consumer, it's given me a lot more control, okay? So these two factors, absolutely, it's like giving a technology in the hands of a defense organization versus somebody else, right? It's up to, at the end of the day, technology is up to who uses it. But I think that the access and the control which has been given, it's tremendous, which was not there earlier. I believe that is what we need to control. Whether you are a BA, whether you are a management leader, how you use that control, and that is why we are able to think of a human experience. At one point in time, we were not able to think of that human experience because we did not even have basics covered. We had to figure out effectiveness, innovation. For every problem, we had to put 10 people. Now we don't need to. So that's why now we are thinking of experiences in a much larger way. So I believe that access and control is always going to be there. It's just that now it's a lot more accessible, a lot more control is with us.
Thank you. Any other question, please? There's a question in the back. Yeah. Keep your questions short because I'm sure there are a lot of questions. So let's give as many opportunities as possible to people.
Mainly to a relationship of trust. So that way they'll be able to understand what the customer really needs, what is there in the application that is redundant and what should be added. And at the same time, they'll also be in a position to advise whether to go really digital now or not. And the second aspect is about the data. How do you identify which of the data is, relevant or not, or junk? Data analyst sitting somewhere else will not be able to do it. A BA sitting there will be in a better position to do that for the simple reason they are in direct contact with the customer. In such a situation, but for this to happen, the organization would have to place that BA with the client for at least 6 months or 8 months for the learning curve to take place. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think no BA role the fundamental to that BA role is to interact with the customer. I think,
Yeah, that's the basis.
I think that's where it starts. And I think the journey in which that business analyst could get to that path, that could be different in different organizations. So for example, in some customers or in some organizations, you know, some BAs probably could be in early part of the journey, then probably you have certain limiting factors, because you do want, when you stand in front of a customer, I think all of us for that matter, when all of us want to stand in front of the customer, we want to be asking the right questions, we want to be known for our intellect, we want to be known for all the right things that I ask so that I'm able to provide the right solution for the problem that they are asking us to kind of look at. So if these are all the right things that all of us want to do, sometimes some organizations probably could have different levels of maturity of how frequently or how often or how quickly you can get there. But definitely, yes, I think the basic framework of any business analyst and thereby the business analysis community is really by interacting with customers, and you're really the liaison to really bring that business context to whatever else that has to be done. So yeah, there is no second thoughts about it. And today in the world of wherever we are talking, it is just that customer definition, like she said, is changing so much that it is not just that one, you know, earlier it was like, okay, I go into a workshop room, there are these 5 stakeholders I have to meet, I have to talk, I think I'm kind of done. But today it is not 5, it's probably 50, because there are some people who are using some part of this feature, and then there are some people who are outside the ecosystem, which is not even in your enterprise. You got to think of all of those kind of things as well. So I guess it's a matter of just, maybe some organizations have different maturity to get there, but clearly yes, the role has to be client facing.
For your second question, I think that's precisely the role I described, that the business analyst being the bridge between data and...
Yeah, that's already answered. Question please, yeah.
With the technology innovation and everything is happening around us, is the domain relevance of a BA is diminishing? That's my question.
Can I take that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, please.
Absolutely not.
Now is the revival. Now is the explosive growth in my view. That's what we are experiencing.
In fact, what we are all saying unanimously is, domain is a given. Your BA skills are a given. What else should you be learning? Okay? So there's no doubt about it. A short answer.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and let's keep it that crisp. Another question, please. Yep.
We all agree that technology is changing so rapid. We also understand that BAs over time became the subject matter experts. They know business more than what business needs. If a customer wanted to order a pizza, we tell him like what. We have seen some sessions where they say, while he's walking, we tell them, the systems tell them that what they should buy. More than I wanted, system tells me you buy this. I understand all this, but then if you see Bitcoin, things like that, which are disruptive technology, they actually have disrupted the economy as well. They've not only helped the economy, they've disrupted the economy as well. So how do you think that BAs play a role in regulating this environment? Because this is episode everywhere. So how do we regulate this environment? Do we have a role to play in this?
So there are 2 parts. Ken, you want to take this question? Please go ahead.
I'll first want to correct something in what you said, and I don't want anybody to walk in with that mindset ever. I think first, never assume you know something more than a customer. I think while of course we will develop a lot of knowledge, we will develop a lot of insights about a customer, that we have become better than what I was yesterday, but always, I think we should always have that open mindset to listen to customer more, and I probably know more than what customer wants. I think never have this mindset. I think it will be a point of failure for you. I think that's the first thing. Maybe that's not what you meant.
Yeah, I said it's a predict.
I think that's not what you meant.
Yeah, we predict what customer needs.
Yeah, but I think the second part what you asked, I think she beautifully articulated. I think today with a business and technology that is at a throwaway place of whatever you want to do, you can do with it. The 2 important aspects that she called out is really the answer for that, which is the access and the control. And these are absolutely needed for any kind of environment that you want to regulate, whether you're looking at a financial services industry, whether you're looking at the life sciences industry, or whether you're looking at a health industry, any industry that you're looking at, to regulate the right technology for the right problem and for the right value and for a right experience for the customer. I think for all of these things have to come into play. There is clearly a business value that is at the center of whatever it is, but complemented by the access and the control. I think all of them have to work together for really working on that regulated controlling environment.
Because one of the stalls today talk about, you give me your email address, I tell you what you are. You know, this is like, actually this is threatening to me. Because I'm not joking, this is threatening to me. Because I'm not old gen person. Today I believe that I have been in this transformation. I wish to know my app to tell me what I have to do. I wish to know my news to read it by default. At the same time, if somebody knows me more than what I know, even though, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Maybe the quote, is a science a master or a slave? I don't know, but then
yeah,
I think there should be some emphasis on regulations.
Look at it, I think I look at it this way. There's a disruption going on.
Yes.
And then after disruption, things will settle down. So there are apprehensions about this technology innovation. Some are threats being considered as threats, some are being considered as phenomenal technologies that will change human life and whatnot. But I think all disruptions carry certain risks. Yes. But over a period of time, as the innovations mature, it's a natural course of action that I would assume every business process will go through, every businesses will go through.
Maybe rephrasing my
life
question,
cycle.
will BA community invest some IIBA as an institute? Will it invest in bringing some ethical basics to all BAs on the ground? You know what I'm saying? Because this is a little more on ethics, isn't it?
As a part of our current membership charter, there are ethic guidelines already in place, by the way.
But that's changing. You know what I'm saying?
That's changing.
That time email cannot give you about other person, but then it has more power.
Yeah, ethics are in the form of best practices, and let can also contribute to that. It's in the form of best practices and competencies and guidelines and what you should be doing in this disruptive world and what kind of capabilities you should build to be able to effectively deliver.
Correct.
Beyond that, whether you are personally ethical or not, I think that's not something we would get into. But Ken, you want to contribute?
Yeah, so make an observation about it that if I look back to recent history, just 2010, it was not as common that business analysts touch base directly with end customers.
Correct.
It was more around, it's even in the BA book where we describe more stakeholders, and it really contemplated those inside the enterprise.
Yeah.
Were the touch points. And I think the point that's being made here is that it's now reaching outside the enterprise, right? It's being end customer perspective as the driver of it. And I think from that, we derive another change in the business analysis factor, which is BAs getting more into design. So it's beyond analysis, it's more into design, designing the experience, designing the business process. So that notion of design carries over, if you take it to its logical conclusion, of really being more accountable for the solution and the outcome, and tying it back to the desired business outcome that triggered the work to start in the first place. So I think all of those are changes that are happening out there. The other observation I wanted to throw in, which is a little more random based on one of the original questions about the impact of science. I think the context of what's happening here and the nature of what we're discussing in the sense of digital, there's another whole set of overlays going on in our society about changes in other technologies. And the one that jumps foremost into my mind are changes in biological knowledge, right? And the ability to integrate the technology that we use in the information science world with the technology of biology. And now we're talking about robotic surgery. We're talking about advanced diagnostic and remedy situations, personalization of pharmaceuticals. The world around us is changing not just in what we're doing, but across a broader spectrum, and it changes business models and our digital response to the opportunities of new businesses that are occurring in startups, not just in the digital technology world, but across all the ways that affect our lives. And I think that's a driver of newness. It's not just the same infrastructure, the same practices across medicine, across all kinds of service delivery to humanity. They're all changing. I think it's changing education with opportunities to apply digital technology. So I think, we're facing a change in societal outcomes from a number of improvements that are mostly driven by changes in technology around digital, but manifest themselves in many different outcomes.
I agree.
Thank you.
I agree, yeah.
So for the paucity of time, we'll just take one last question. Yeah, there's a hand in the behind. Yep.
Hello, my name is Tawkir. We have been listening to some interesting presentations, a lot of insight into digital transformation and what it means to business analysis community. So I, being personally a business analyst, I'm a little bit confused because I've heard some conflicting points as well, or maybe that's my understanding. So before I leave this convention, I want to take away a few I want to have some key takeaways as a business analyst today. When there is a total transformation in the digital world that's hitting the industry and there is disruption, what are those key things that I need to take away home? Because why I'm saying is that on one side I'm hearing that technology is going to be the driving force. On the other side, I'm still hearing that the business is still the driving force. And I think they both are, personally, if you ask me, they both are true at their own places, because there are still some business problems to be solved, some very basic business problems to be solved. But the disruption is so huge right now, the business is also feeling a bit insecure and asking the technology, okay, you tell us what we should do. Because we've been doing a lot, and we don't know what's coming. So you, as a technology providers or the experts of technology, you tell us what should we do. So as a business analyst, I want to understand, what am I supposed to do in this kind of situation?
You want to
Thank you.
I will give you two takeaways. I think the point still holds good, okay? Business, and then whatever technology can enable, whichever way it can enable, that's the way it will drive. I think that's the most important thing you should have in mind. But I think as an individual, if I'm a business analyst today, and if I am in this world of all these things that are happening, there are about 2 or 3 very important aspects I will focus in my career. First and foremost is get more deeper into what I know better. Today, if I just know how well to do requirements gathering, how well I should conduct workshops, how well I should do interactive gathering and put together everything and all of that, I think that those times are gone.
Correct. That's basic, bare minimum expectation.
Yeah. So basically the first takeaway would be that get specialized on something so that you are able to do a client relevant conversation. Now that specialization could be a deep domain area. So if you are somebody who has worked on a financial services, get more deeper into it, get more better understand the business processes so that you are able to help customer to reimagine their business. That will be my first suggestion. The second suggestion is, if you want to do that conversation where you want to help customers reimagine their business, technology is actually something that is coming more and more disruptive, more and more becoming fantastic tool.
Correct.
To actually make things which was never possible or probably something that is impossible to achieve is making it possible. That means your ability to appreciate and understand some of those technologies to help the customer to say, for this problem, maybe there is an option to look at it. There is no way that you need to become a technology expert. That does not mean that. You need to have an appreciation of some of these technologies so that you are able to enable that conversation. You can always bring somebody who talks data at the finest, lowest level in terms of starting to build that architecture over there. I think she beautifully put it out. Be that bridge so that you are able to bring that conversation more effectively to that customer. So those will be my 2 suggestions. You as a business analyst, when you're going out of this convention, this is what 2 things you must do.
Thank you.
Just to add to her, the skill that I think Shantha mentioned repetitively, customer empathy. We've always said talk to the customer, he or she is the first, but I think it's now because we have so much of access to their processes, their different sources of how they look at their business, I think the empathy can be taken at an nth level. So it's not just building relationship, I think the customer experience is another key takeaway for all of us.
So thanks for asking that question, and thank you, ladies.
I just want to add, to answer, if you people allow, just it will take 2-3 minutes. It goes to very fundamental things. Actually, since yesterday I am observing, and people are talking user experience, customer empathy, blah, 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 lot of things. Let me tell you, it all goes to one fundamental thing given by Aristo. If you have to understand, if you have to communicate, you need three things: ethos, pathos, logos. Till now, whatever technology, I will explain what is, you are okay with the time? Or
I think we are scarce of time anyways.
okay. Till
We are 3 minutes over.
Okay. Till now, we were just taking care of ethos and logos. What is this one? You as a business analyst, this is my message to business analyst, you go make a rapport with the client. Of course, you are coming from IBM, you are coming from Accenture, you will have a good rapport. And logos means content. You try to understand the requirement. There is one aspect which was given by the Aristo, that is the pathos, empathy. It was missing till date. We have not done anything special. Now, that patho component is brought into the picture. Once you go as a business analyst, you have to think that you not only bring ethos, logos, logic, and your reputation, as well as bring empathy. Try to understand customer. And there are tools. Let me give one example which you have given. You have seen the GMRI machine, same machine repainted and presented in front of kid. What you did, you just captured the emotion. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you for bringing point. Thanks for asking question. I think what this last 1 minute did is really summarize the message from the conference for the last 2 days. Customer empathy, learning technology, and being flexible to learn. And I think what IIB is talking about is how do you really go about that journey? I think that's the message that we've got. So thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Phenomenal to host you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. And before you all take a break, just a minute, please. We have quizzes conducted from ThoughtWorks. Thanks to all the speakers. They want to give away the goodies to the winners. So, yep, sure. So, can we have Purnima Jagdish on stage, please? Yeah. Sanjeev Namanathan. Srijit Ram Mohanan.
Please one. Run fast. People are waiting for their tea.
Wajiha Khan and Pankaj Gupta.
Oh, you won the prize. A volunteer wins the prize. Very nice.
And while you take a break, please keep tweeting using the hashtag BA Convention 2018, and we'll see you again at 4 o'clock for closing keynote.
Thank you. Thank you very much.